Good evening and welcome to St. John in the Wilderness for our edition of Between the Trees. And this is actually our last Between the Trees for a little while. We're going to just take a hiatus through the Easter season and then come back with something else that we're going to be trying. So for our last, we waited for the best, for the very last. And tonight we have with us Chris Harms, who along with his family attends here at St. John's. And so throughout the season of Lent, we've been looking at what our bishop refers to as practiced discipleship. And the way we have been looking at that is we've looked at seeking and deciding and praying and learning. And now tonight we're talking about serving. And when we thought about who can we get to talk about serving here at Between the Trees, you are our very first choice, Chris. So I don't know if that's good or bad. That means we need to
you need to deepen the bench.
We do need to deepen the bench. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But also credit to you. You are out there doing it in terms of walking the way of Christ, walking the way of love. You're out there trying and doing what you can to make the world a better place and bringing the kingdom of God here on earth a little bit more. So, but before we get into that whole serving thing, just tell us a little bit about who you are and your family, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm Chris Harms, and I've been coming here with my family since the fall of 2016. My wife Colleen and I got married in 2013, and shortly after that we actually moved to our first house just a couple blocks away, and we rented that house for a little over a year, and then that
was on Cook, right?
That is on Cook.
Yeah, I remember you said you lived on Cook for a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, you could throw a rock and hit the armory.
Okay.
Not
cool.
that I did, but yeah. And then we moved over by the Tamarack Nature Center, and then a year ago we sold that house because the house shrunk as we grew. We moved in there with 2 children and left with 5. So we sold that house and moved out to Woodbury, which has been good, but it's been hard to leave White Bear Lake. We've got family out there. My wife has her sister out there, so it's definitely nice to be a little closer to family, but miss White Bear Lake. But I've got Giving Gardens, which brings me back at least once a week. So,
yeah. With families, isn't it like that? You make decisions, and sometimes there are compromises, and you do the best you can.
You do the best you can. So, Colleen and I, like I said, have been married since 2013. We've been living out this away since 2014, and together we've got my oldest daughter, Georgia, who's going to be turning 16 next week.
Wow.
So March and April are birthday months. So my oldest daughter, like I said, she'll be 16 next week. My next in line is Ivor, and he turned 7 earlier this month. And Inga turns 6 at the end of April. And Vigo turned 4 a few days ago on the 21st. My wife's birthday is the 22nd, and I will not say how old she turned. And then it's just myself and the baby, Oscar, who's 2, holding things down in the fall for fall birthdays. But springtime is a busy time in our house. Lots of cake.
I bet every season is a busy time in your house.
Yes. Yes, it is.
And I've seen you when you've been up here serving, doing some Giving Garden stuff at our garden here at church. You usually have kids with you. You're doing kind of double duty. You're being good dad, but you're also doing the servanthood thing too. It's hard, I bet.
Just wrangle them up, yep.
I bet though, they probably don't even, I wonder how much they'll remember, of it. But it's such a good witness, I think, for your kids to just see, why are we doing, and I don't know if you even have discussions like that in the van, like, Dad, why are we doing this? Why we have a garden right at our house. Why do you have to go over to the church and do the garden? Or we're building a garden for somebody else. We'll get into what all that is, sure, but I'm just wondering, with the kids kind of witnessing what you do, have you ever thought of it like that?
I have, and it's as they're getting older, and I'm thinking a couple of years ago, especially with my daughter Inga, it's just, as you're just growing those conversations, and why do we bring food to the food shelf or to the senior program and whatever, and besides doing something good for someone else, you can kind of slip into the narrative, just the facts that food is expensive, and some folks have more than others. So install gratitude that we, have enough, and we grow for ourselves from our own garden. And part of our way of being in our community, one of the community hats that we wear is, helping those who, lack the resources to have fresh food.
Yeah, there are good-hearted folks, and I realize that, and I know that in our culture there is a sense that we help other people out, but the dominant theme in our culture is not that. Our dominant culture is to build yourself up. Mm-hmm. And and everybody should be independent from each other. That isn't the Christian message, but that is the dominant theme in American culture, I think.
It is, and one of my hopes, one of my prayers about COVID-19 and the world that we enter on the back end of that is that we don't have a short memory about our longing for connection. I think people have kind of risen to the surface a little bit to have a greater respect for the things that we've taken for granted. Be it, I, as I was telling you before we got going, just being in this building for the first time in a year, and being in this sanctuary fills me with joy and reflection, and it's a beautiful building. But I hope that people, I do feel that the soil will be fertile, pun intended, for people to be out there seeking something else. And that's part of what gets me really excited about St. John in the Wilderness and this community, is the work that we do here and have been doing here leading up to COVID-19, I think positions our hearts and our message in such a way that for those who are seeking more community, we'll find, a happy home here. Yeah.
I think you're right about that we've come to realize that we really like not always being with each other, but a lot of us are really missing community. And when I think through the history of the Israelites, so many of our liturgies are remembering big events that happened in their history. And then these liturgies replay those events so that you never forget. So I wonder if we'll come up with a COVID liturgy, remember 2020 and what that meant about living in community. Because you're right, I think it would behoove us to remember our longing for community.
Mm-hmm. And I've thought about that a little bit, about the Israelites, make it across the Red Sea and set out on their 40-year search, their journey, and around year 36 or 8 or whatever, we're probably getting pretty fatigued. And I think about that in terms of COVID fatigue, and that it's more important now than ever to keep the faith in that place we're gonna get to.
Right.
as the community of St. John's and White Bear Lake and the greater Twin Cities in Minnesota and the world.
Yeah.
And we will look back and celebrate with grief and sadness what we've lost. But again, like you said, in the liturgical sense, I think that everything has its season.
Yeah.
And, this will pass and will be a part of our story.
One of the things that I hope comes out of this, in addition to what you named, which is that sense of increased connectedness, community that we are, but this theme that we have about discipleship, that somehow in COVID we've learned that serving each other is something really important. Now, I know that you've been a committed Christian for a long time, and in other churches you've experienced a lot of different traditions, I think, in your young life, but but I'm wondering for you, we use these words like discipleship, but for you, what is a disciple?
Yeah, you're right. I have been raised in the Christian faith tradition and came up in the what would be most broadly defined as the evangelical church. And I'd say that in my mid-20s, I probably earlier than that, honestly, departed from that. And by the time I came back around to the consideration of a brick and mortar place to worship,
right,
St. John's was really the end of that journey, of that search. And which was a sweet twist of fate. But I think that the path that started in leading me here was unlearning big R religion and big C church, right?
Oh, wow. Okay.
And a lot of the toxic practices that I can see now separated me from fulfillment in spirituality. The entire Christian walk is counterintuitive.
Yeah.
It's not going to make you more wealthy. You're probably not doing it right if you're building massive amounts of wealth.
Oh, you're bringing me way down here, Chris. What other things is it going to do to me?
But it's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
It's a practice of service to oftentimes a point of exhaustion. But at that point of exhaustion, when you have so little left to give, is the moment when you are wealthiest in gratitude, in your own sense of belonging and awareness, and all of those really the true things of meaning and value. Yeah. But the whole walk is counterintuitive. So it's really doing that reverse programming of growing up in a toxic religious culture or faith communities and relearning that. And so a lot of what I've found here at St. John's is that one of the things that I loved when I first got here was that not knowing was okay.
Yeah, right.
And we really shouldn't, because if we're going to worship a God that is infinite and we accept that we have a finite mind,
right,
we don't need to have an answer for everything.
Yeah.
Nor should we.
Yeah.
And growing up in, again, what would be defined as that evangelical or conservative Christian backdrop, it's unacceptable to not have the answer.
Yeah.
Which I think creates its own spiritual anxiety.
Yeah, right.
But to come to St. John's and have that not only be okay, but be celebrated, was really one of the first pieces that kind of put the hooks into me.
I love that idea about discipleship being partly unlearning. Because you're right. I mean, our culture is not, I mean, we say we're a Christian nation, and in some ways we are, but in some ways, what true Christianity is so, like you say, so countercultural, and we have to unlearn that. We have to unlearn that. We have to relearn what it means to actually follow Christ. Mm-hmm. Part of that is serving, and we're about to head into Holy Week, and one of the liturgies we do is on Maundy Thursday, where we celebrate Jesus, his Last Supper with his friends. But also at that occasion, he does this strange thing where he stoops down and he washes their feet, which is this super humble expression of serving somebody else. You started Giving Gardens back in when?
Late 2016.
Okay, so it's been going about 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Why in the world? I mean, and Giving Gardens, why don't you tell us a little bit about what Giving Gardens is and why in the world? Because your life was pretty crazy with kids and life and everything back then, too. Where did you find the space, and why was that important for you to start that up?
So, in putting all of that in context, it was all kind of coming together in this collision. We as a society had been enduring the election, which ended up being Clinton and Trump, which I think revealed an ugliness that we've had to come to accept as something that's happening. It is a piece of what is going on in our nation and in our world right now. But in all of that ugliness, and you got to remember that my first day here was actually Rally Sunday.
Oh, yeah, wow.
Completely by accident.
Huh.
And, but yeah, again, it was a few months of being here and being in this place, and it was this idea that there's got to be something more. People do gravitate towards good things, and all of this noise that's going on up here, I don't feel is reflective of the average person. I do think that they gravitate towards things that are, that make them feel good and promote connectedness.
Yeah. I think that's the Holy Spirit inside of each one of us. That yearning for connection, I think, is the Holy Spirit that is crying out to be connected with the Spirit in another.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And so, but then, like I said, it was this super fortunate collision of stuff. Food insecurity had been something of interest for a while. Food insecurity is different than hunger in that food insecurity is defined as not having enough of all of the types of food that make up a healthy diet, whereas hunger is conventional, just not having enough sustenance. And it so broadly affects our society, but is camouflaged, especially in communities like White Bear Lake, because we have visible signs of affluence, like around the lake or wherever. But still, there was more than 25% of our seniors won't have the expendable income to fully fund a nutritious diet.
Wow.
I don't even want to think about what the numbers look like now, a year removed from COVID starting. But food insecure families are probably, around 32 or 35%.
Wow.
And so you're talking about living on the brink, and so it's that idea that, how can these two demonstrative things, people have such pride in being from here and living here, and the good and rich culture that we have in White Bear Lake.
Right.
But then to also have such a demonstrative need, there was something not really adding up. And I think it was something connecting that. A vehicle was needed to connect those two.
Huh.
And what I found was, okay, let's do something to create an impact in bringing a product to food shelves, the senior program, whatever. But let's also create a conversation, because awareness is equally, if not more valuable than, the product that we bring to the shelf.
So you started Giving Gardens, and what does Giving Gardens do? A little plug, do a commercial for Giving Gardens.
So what we do is we offer folks a way to grow fresh produce for contribution to one of our local organizations here that serves those that may be experiencing food insecurity. And we do that by doing 4-foot by 8-foot garden beds. So you are going to get a garden bed from us. You sign up to volunteer with us, and we bring you everything. We set it up, we fill it up with dirt and compost, everything you need to get going, seeds and plants and everything. And what we ask is that you donate a majority, 51% or more, of what is grown and harvested from your Giving Garden to one of our local organizations that is in the fight against food insecurity. And the rest you put on your table or share with your neighbors. And
I love that, because that's real sharing. It's here in the church we talk about the tithe sometimes, which is 10%, and we sort of pat ourselves on the shoulder when we hit 10%, but you're asking for 51%. Mm-hmm. That's real sharing. That's beautiful.
And
did you think about that beforehand? Did you think, what's an appropriate amount, or what did...
Not really. It was just, the pitch was really that you were buying into volunteering with this because you would be donating a majority of the stuff to, and a lot of people will build themselves a second garden bed for their own table or for whatever. A lot of people have built second and third ones and don't even know how much they're giving to the food shelf. It's just, it's infectious. And the relationship that comes from that is you're put in direct relationship with the need. And I think the part of the design of Giving Gardens that I appreciate the most is that, and it really was a hope on my part, because the logistics would have been a nightmare otherwise, is that people bring, they part of volunteering is accepting the responsibility of bringing your stuff to the food shelf. And that has been the surprise that has gotten to me the most, is that is what people value the most. And I think that there's something to that. I think that in bringing something to its end user, its end point, seeing the face of need,
right,
and seeing yourself. I love using the parable of the Good Samaritan, because if the only moral that you walk away from after receiving a sermon based on that, or reading it yourself or whatever, is that you should do nice things for other people, that's great, but I think that you've missed the point. As we spiritually mature, I think that we see ourselves not only in the Good Samaritan, but also as the man or woman beaten and left for dead on the side of the road.
Yeah, right.
And in finding definition and identity with both, I think that we mature, and I think that we mature in a way that grows our capacity to be connected to other people in different situations.
Oh, wow. Beautiful. Oh, okay, 2 questions, and I know that there's some questions that'll be coming in with the Wonder Stick. You haven't seen the high-tech Wonder Stick. But I have 2 questions before that. First one, quick how in the world did you find space in your life for giving gardens? And maybe you gave me a clue with the word exhaustion.
Okay. So I would be remiss if I didn't admit that I kind of sort of founded it without fully gaining my wife's buy-in. And she was pregnant with our son Vigo, who just turned 4 at the time. And there is that. And but you know, it just, you find, again, like I use the word capacity. Yeah. You find what you're capable of when you've got the most going on.
Okay.
When you are left with the least resources, you find how to be the most resourceful.
Yeah. I mean, Jesus does say those who lose their lives will find it, and those who, so, you know, it's the same sort of thing. When you think that you got nothing left, all of a sudden, the kingdom of God is right here.
Yeah, and I think it's also it's joyful work. It's something I feel really good doing and good about doing, and you know, having the kids, you know, help out and pick tomatoes and whatever. I mean, it's just
a great way to spend time with your own kids.
Yeah, I mean, they're a disaster, but I mean, I think you've actually seen us out there, and they're like throwing cherry tomatoes at each other, and like,
it's awesome. So, it is fantastic.
Just like, guys, please make sure that some get to the food shelf.
Okay, one last question, because and I'm asking this selfishly because I'm the rector of this church. So we've been in this COVID time, and we're going to come back. There'll be some things that are the same, I'm sure, when we come back, but we're different. Things are changed, and maybe not for the, maybe not for the worse. I mean, and I'm wondering, as we come back, and as you think about somebody who's a committed Christian who wants to follow Jesus, is serious about a life of discipleship, and you've exhibited that through serving, what sort of congregation, what sort of parish family, what would it look like for you that you'd want to go, yes, that is the place I want to be a part of?
Oh, man. I can answer that in saying that it's many of the things that have defined St. John's. A place that, for all intents and purposes, my wife and I should be fully outfitting the nursery whenever it is that it, I mean, because we will eventually have put 4 children through there. But for a place where I love it that children are celebrated. You incorporate the kids in your own preaching and messages, which I think is important. But just how, I think, open and accepting. I mean, my chaos with the kids does not change when we walk through the door.
Yeah.
I mean, they're completely chaotic in here too.
Yeah.
And for a community, for a family of a congregation to be so welcoming to that, not only meant a lot to me when I first came in undoing a lot of that toxic religion or religiosity, but you know, so I think it's the preserving of that feeling. And that first Sunday that I came, which, like I said, was rally day, I was trying to slip out the door. And I would have if Mark Thorson had not been standing in my way. And I'm a big guy, but I'm not that big that I'm going to try and run through Mark Thorson. And he just captivated me in a way that did not give me a choice but to be engaged. And that's it. So, I mean, it's Mark Thorson, and then I think of all of the other people that have just touched my walk and continue to. Mike Lovett,
Yeah.
the Lovitts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's too many to name. And
I love that idea of, I mean, the Episcopal Church, our theology does well with mess. We do pretty well. We're a messy brand of Christian, or a way of being a Christian. But I'm glad that was your experience here at St. John's too, that our faith community, it's a kudos to our people that they embrace people where they are, and that's a beautiful thing. I think that is a great hallmark for
exactly
a faith community.
And so I think that the messier you feel with your religious past, the better a place St. John in the Wilderness is for you to be. If you feel in chaos, this is a place for you.
It's a good place.
And that's what makes me excited about what comes next.
All right, so here we go, Chris. We've got the Wonder Stick coming in here.
Okay.
High tech, eh? Here it comes. Okay, so these are hot off the press, or whatever the screen is, hot off the screen. Okay, is the act, and I have no idea what these say, is the act of tending the garden also an act of worship, and in addition to an act of service? Does it feel like worship out there? Is it just a lot of sweat and dirt?
That's a really great question, because I'm not going to speak for any of the other gardeners, but I'm regularly at this place of amazement in the growth cycle and in just being out in nature, and it's good for you. I mean, it's really good for you, and just I think the amazement and gratitude is worthy of that I get from growing. I mean, if we do nothing, something's going to grow. It's just the way this whole, earth is designed. And if we do nothing, our lives are shut down.
Yeah.
It's going to heal itself too.
Yeah.
We saw that with the pollution and whatnot when COVID happened.
Right.
But no, so just that amazement with nature is worship. It's great.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the words you used, amazement, gratitude, wonder, all that is what worship is. And when worship is done well, those are the emotions, I think, that are elicited.
I think so too.
Okay, did you find any books or other resources helpful on your journey away from evangelicalism?
Boy.
Or how did that go? You don't have to say books.
Okay, so this might sound really dumb, but The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Really anything Mark Twain, but I think about how he reflected some of those charismatic points of Southern Christianity, or Missouri, Arkansas-ish, back in his time, and adding the dramatic elements to it. And it was healing in a way, because I could kind of laugh at it. Yeah. Like the church, I can't remember the camp meetings.
Right.
He would talk about the jug of whiskey that was behind the wagon, and
that's right.
The preacher would be railing against the fire and brimstone and the ills of the world, and then you'd catch him back there for a card game with the. And so it gave me something to laugh with.
Yeah.
I think if I thought hard about it. I think what's been hard is seeing a lot of the seeds that were planted, back in, the 90s, and where, the James Dobsons and the focus on the family and all of that stuff planted those seeds in the culture wars.
Yeah.
And seeing all of that come to fruition in leading up to the election and kind of where we've come to from there has been painful, because it's seeing, again, that growth cycle of that bad seed.
Yeah.
And seeing that come full circle.
And it's so tricky because, not all of that is bad stuff. I mean, I've read Dobson, and some of those teachings are super helpful and good and scriptural and of faith. But it's tricky, because if they're twisted a certain way, then it becomes, the word I've been using lately is just violent. It becomes this violent thing. It separates people from one another and is not helpful. If anything that separates, I'm not sure is as of the Spirit of God.
Well, and I think that using that example, that, and poor Dobson is getting the the example here, but if his words are something that separates people, it spoils the whole plant. It spoils the whole message.
Yeah.
It's not an extraction of the good stuff and, leaving the rest there. It's, anything that separates people, that divides people, is not of the design of God.
Right.
And my hope is that as a nation, we find a way to elevate above the temptations of polarization.
Yeah.
Of just going and getting that same message that touches on that button that feels good or comfortable.
Yeah.
And take on the counterintuitive, because it feels unsafe. Getting to know another man's walk in life feels unsafe. Yeah. But it is so much more rewarding to do so.
Yeah,
and that's the way that we're designed to live. We're designed to live in relationship, not in cheap overture to back and forth about what we want to hear.
Our presiding bishop says, if it's not about love, it's not about God. In fact, we have yard signs, St. John's, we made some yard signs up that have that exact same thing, and we'll probably pull those out again and put them in our yards. But, love is just about relationship. It's about connection, real, where you're really in the journey together. That's what love is. And I think that's what you're talking about. So, okay, let's see. One last question, I guess. Or is the last one the best one? I'll see, because last time Jeff said, you didn't ask the best one. What are the most looking forward? What are you most looking forward to when we can all be together again? That's a great question.
Okay, so what are you
most looking forward to when we all get back together? Maybe just being able to drop the kids off in the downstairs, I don't know, and getting a breather from the kids.
I need Miss Lorna in my life,
Lorna.
Okay, so let's see. Okay, so I'll give you one that's not necessarily tied to here, and then I'll get to that. I miss the Twins, the Minnesota Twins.
That's great.
I mean, I'm not a wealthy man, and certainly not at Target Field, but an outdoor ballpark on just, July, August, it's warm out, it's just beautiful. Just a hot dog and a Coke or beer or whatever your fancy is. It's just that thing.
Yeah.
It's just that little teeny slice of Americana that I found myself missing.
Won't that be awesome?
And I think that if I went to Alabama football games, because that's my thing. It's where I went to school. That would be what I miss the most, but
like
but many things have changed with COVID-19, but as you know, the University of Alabama won the national championship.
I know it.
So
yes.
that dominance has continued. And but no, what I miss, I'm most looking forward to, I think, our summer picnic that we've had here is just, I mean, for me, kind of hits on everything. It hits on, the connection and community within our congregation here. We've got a beautiful church inside and out. Beautiful Minnesota weather. Speaking of scarcity, that's one thing I love the most about Minnesota and Minnesotans is our culture of being outdoors when it's nice outside.
Yeah, right.
I'm just looking forward to just seeing everybody again. And I mean, I think my kids have actually missed church more than I think I've let myself think about it.
Wow, that's great.
And so, especially early on in the pandemic, that they were grieving maybe that's the wrong word, but it felt like a type of missing or longing.
Yeah.
And so to kind of see their connection to this place through their own eyes, be it going down to the kids' room, the nursery with Miss Lorna and Rona and playing and doing whatever they do that they're kind enough to not tell me about when I come and pick them up.
Well, we will get back to that. So that's a great way to sort of cap off our time and cap off Between the Trees, because that day is coming when we will come back. So we have a Bible study that's about to start at 6:45, but before we leave with Between the Trees, I want to thank Jeff White, who most Wednesday evenings has been here behind the camera, helping out almost every single Wednesday. He's been fantastic. Carrie Thomas as well has been doing this every single week. So we hope that you have enjoyed our series Between the Trees. We'll do something like this again for sure, but we're just going to take a little hiatus. And next Wednesday night, it's Holy Week, and next Wednesday night is Stations of the Cross around the church outside. So if you're looking for something to do next Wednesday night, that's what you can do. So thanks so much for joining us, Chris. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. Keep up the good work. Keep on being a good disciple of Christ, and or keep trying. Me too. And thanks to all of you too. Thanks, Jeff. Good evening.